Thank you. It is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce one of our newest rising stars, Bob Smith. And Bob today is going to do his icebreaker speech from our Conflict Communication Manual, speech number 1. He's going to do an introduction of himself. That's what an icebreaker speech is. So Bob is going to talk to us today about growing up at growing up at the corner of 2 gravel roads. So please help me and welcome me, Bob, and this is going to be a 4 to 6 minute speech. Bob?
Greetings, fellow Toastmasters, or as they say at the intersection of 2 gravel roads. Purpose is an opportunity to get to know me a little better and share some of the experiences that I had growing up at the intersection of 2 gravel roads. I think my experiences are probably different than a lot of the people in this room. I may be going out on a limb, but I think most of you had indoor plumbing. We didn't. We had cold water in the kitchen, but no bathroom or no hot water anywhere in the house. Another one of the items that you may have had kind of modern convenience was a telephone. We didn't have a telephone. Fortunately, my aunt and uncle lived about 100 yards down the road, and they were more than willing to let me use their phone pretty much any time. But my parents wanted to sort of instill a little bit of responsibility. I think didn't want me bugging them all the time. So they made me pay them a quarter every time I used their phone. And back at that time, you could buy a bottle of pop for a dime, so digging in for a quarter to make a local call was a little frightening at times. But the inconvenience of walking 100 yards to make a phone call really paled in comparison to those 6 a.m., middle of the winter, wind blowing, snow yay deep, trudges to the outhouse. Open the door and plop down on the coldest piece of porcelain you'll ever see. But growing up at the intersection of 2 gravel roads had some advantages. One, it was a farm. My dad was a full-time farmer. So I got lots of time with my dad. He raised crops, corn, beans, wheat, hay. He also milked about 12 to 15 cows at any one time. So he was always around. And with farmland, we had about 200 acres. With farmland, you don't want to waste any of it. But I wanted a baseball diamond. So unlike Field of Dreams, where they just plowed up half a cornfield to make a baseball diamond, Dad says, just use a cow pasture. He says, that'll work. He says, you can use as much as you want. You don't have to have a small diamond. You have as big as you want. And that was good. I mean, you had, maintenance was minimal because the cows kept the grass cut right down really short. But one of the obstacles was when you slid into second base in a cow pasture, you want to make darn sure that was second base and not a big old number 2 by one of the normal inhabitants of that cow pasture. My mom worked at a lot of the local offices in the small towns in the area, but she also raised chickens. So we sold eggs, and we sold them out the back door of our house in an unrefrigerated room. We would have hundreds of eggs in that back room. People would come in, buy eggs. They'd buy a dozen, they'd buy 3 dozen. Sometimes they'd come in and chat. Sometimes they'd just pick them up and go. So they sat out there in a 90-degree room for days, maybe even weeks on end. Nobody ever got sick. But she was a little ahead of her time with those chickens, because they were free-range chickens. Not that she was really an organic farmer. We just had a kind of a crummy, tumbling, falling down chicken coop with no door. So they were free range on their own, which was good, but for a kid that loved to take his shoes off the day school got out and not really put them on again until fall, you didn't have to. You got to the point where you really were careful where you walked or ran, or you're going to have an ooze between your toes that you're not going to like. I had one sister. She was about 2 years younger than me. And like probably most farm girls, she was a bit of a tomboy, so if we had projects going, whether it was milking cows or baling hay or whatever the project was, she was right in there helping. So So that was good. My grandmother lived with us until she died at age 88. And the reason she lived with us is her husband, my grandfather, passed away when my dad was 13. So my dad at age 13 more or less took over the farm. He had some older brothers and sisters that had all moved away. And he had one younger brother, age 9, that really wasn't ready to take over a 200-acre farm at age 9. So Dad stayed there. He actually stayed on the farm. And he actually passed away in the house he was born in, which is an experience probably very few people anymore will ever have, just to live your entire life in one house. My dad was one of 7 brothers and sisters, and all of them were essentially farmers, and none of them moved more than 5 miles away. So as a kid, they were all part-time, full-time farmers, so they all had acreage. So as a kid, that was really neat, because all my cousins were close. We had woods, we had fields, we had swamps, we had creeks, we had ditches to play, so there was always some kind of an adventure going on. Now, the downside is my family tree is a lot taller than it is wide. Then on my mother's side, she had one sister who had 2 boys, one about my age and one quite a bit older. But we really didn't do a lot with them. We kind of looked at them as hillbillies. When you grow up at the intersection of 2 gravel roads, you learn about work at a pretty young age. By the time I was 7 or 8 years old, I was milking cows, pitching manure, driving tractors. By the time I was in about 3rd or 4th grade, I was taking time off from school in the spring to help with the farming, get the fields ready for planting. So you didn't miss any activities. In the summertime, one of our big activities, the real moneymaker for a farm kid, was when hay baling season rolled around. And my dad and my uncle had essentially the only hay baler within a fairly large area. So we not only baled my dad, my uncle, my cousins, but a lot of the neighbors. So I would contract out to help with the hay baling. And on a really good day, you could bale up to 1,000 bales a day. The going rate for somebody helping was a penny a bale. So everything fell into place. The equipment didn't break down, the weather cooperated. You could make $10 in a 12-hour day. At the end of the day, our little respite was we would all jump in the back of somebody's beat-up old pickup and drive into the local little town, buy a pop, 10 cents, and drive out to the gravel pits and go swimming and clean up and sort of get ready for the next day. So in closing, I got some great memories of growing up at the intersection of 2 gravel roads that I wouldn't trade for the world or want to forget. Maybe the outhouse trips would be the exception. Thank you.